Hello and welcome to another episode of The Real Deal with me, Josh, and as always, my dear friend, my confidant, my brother from another mother, Charles Hobby. Charles, welcome to the show.
Oh, wait, I thought this was my show. Am I a guest now?
Charles, it's a pleasure to have you on The Real Deal with Josh and Charles. I'm Josh.
Oh, and I'm Charles.
There you go.
Okay, good. I thought I was, I don't know. Okay, we're good.
I was having a fun Halloween trick with you because it's Halloween week as we record this. And whenever in the future you hear this, you'll know this was an episode full of spooks and ghouls and goblins. And Charles, I don't want to frighten you, but I watched a sort of scary movie halfway through this week.
I actually watched a not very scary movie this week, too.
Well, I watched two movies, I realize now. One more spooky than scary, and the other more stupid than scary. But I watched the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Dr. Caligari 1989, a film that we once took in together at Amherst Cinema nigh on several years ago. A film so suffused with erotic insanity and horrible pulsating walls of flesh and dementia and identity swapping, all in a sort of black box theater from hell. It's a must-see relic of the 80s. Highly recommended. Dr. Caligari, 1989.
So good. And actually, if you happen to fuck up the controls on your giant projector and everything looks really red, it's actually not going to ruin the watching of that movie. It somehow made it a little better. So,
well, in full context, I could have made a call and pointed out that it was not as I remembered it. But the first time I saw it, I was on acid. And as I recall, that evening I was similarly incapacitated and as such could not make the aesthetic judgment that it was not supposed to be entirely in red. But you're right. I don't think it took away from anything.
No, it was good. So I'll watch it sometime without that filter. But definitely agree with you, Josh. Thanks for sharing that one with me. Really good.
The other movie I saw was Rawhead Rex, which is a Clive Barker project that is a delightfully goofy 1986 super low budget British horror film set in Ireland. It's full of mad priests and insane monoliths, demons from beyond, satanic whims. And the best part is that because it's a real dyed-in-the-wool 80s film, the American characters are immediately characterized through the prop of them smoking Marb Reds. So I loved that.
Nice.
A time where that was inseparable from the American identity.
What was that called? Rex?
Rawhead Rex.
Rawhead Rex. All right, I'll have to check that out.
It's real goofy and real 1986, and it really delivers.
Nice. I was way unluckier than you in my two attempts at horror movies this week. I sat through Crimson Peak, the new Guillermo del Toro catastrophe.
I haven't seen it. I kind of wanted to. What I'm detecting from the words you're choosing is that maybe you didn't like the film.
Awful. I don't like Del Toro anyway, but I always try to give him some chances because he's visually he's an interesting guy. I like what he thinks up, but man, he is one of the worst storytellers I've ever seen. He can't write a story and interesting things happening. It's all visual with him. So if you like visual stuff, you could, I guess, put it on in the background. But it's not really, it was awful. I hated it.
I'm going to translate Charles's comments here. And what Charles is trying to say is that if you're a sophomoric bore, a sort of plebe who drags himself one shoelace at a time to the cinemas, go and, eat your popcorn and tune out a life during this piece of dreck.
Yeah, it was funny. The people behind us loved it.
And could you contain your revulsion for their honest enjoyment of a film that you hated?
No, I actually turned around halfway through and I just like untied his shoelaces from in front of him.
Well, fair enough. Hey, sometimes, to quote another scary movie, Charles, sometimes we all go a little mad, don't we? Because I'm a psycho.
What was that from?
Psycho by
oh, yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock.
Alfred. Yeah, that was...
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Good quote.
I'm a psycho man in this hotel here sometimes.
Named after me.
The Psycho Man. And that's from Psychoman, the Alfred Hitchcock film, Psychoman. Starring Norman Mailer.
I think I saw that one. I don't know.
It has a very famous spooky Halloween scene where a lady's in a bath or something. Can't really remember. And she's in the bath. And then someone comes in while she's in the bath. Stuff happens. Can't remember exactly what. Very scary movie.
Did you see the Gus Van Sant remake of that?
Oh, the one starring Vince Vaughn?
I don't think it was. Was that Vince Vaughn?
Oh, I'm pretty confident that's a young Vince Vaughn. That's a
could be.
real piece of shit.
Yeah, that was weird.
That's a real piece of shit. I think Gus Van Sant might be one of the worst directors ever, and that movie is a sterling contribution to his somewhat tawdry collection of films, if I would, deign to taint the word with such usage in context of that man, I say in quotes.
Well, I like him. But yeah, that one was a little weird. I'm not quite sure what he was going after, but, he's pretty good. I like him.
The shot-for-shot remake is one of the most in the endless recycling compost heap of most Hollywood productions. The shot-for-shot remake is one of the most thankless possible undertakings. I don't, for the life of me, understand why people think that ever works. I can understand reinterpreting a film, but
does it at that point become a whole meta thing where you're really just like seeing not only what a remake is, but what a movie actually is down deep? I don't know. I don't think so. But if I wanted to defend it, I might go in that direction.
I understand deconstructing a film, maybe approaching it from another angle or another viewpoint, but then I am not sure how to interpret the gesture.
But that is the deconstruction.
The shot for shot of it?
Yeah, by completely recycling it, you've then entirely deconstructed it by just showing it to us again in the exact same form. I don't know. I would never watch that movie again, but I can potentially defend it in a cinematic critique.
Well, it takes a lot more to sell me on that, Charles.
I mean, I prefer the Dr. Caligari remake that you mentioned to the Psycho remake.
Wow. Well, I like the addendum of 1989 to the title. I love because it's sort of them saying like we vamped this up. The original was about what is reality? What is our perception of reality? Could it be that the lives we lead are, in fact, cupboarded away inside a much larger context we can't possibly understand? What is meaning in an existential frame? And then the remake is just about fucking.
Yeah.
And how it's great to fuck. And if you don't fuck, it's because you have the problem, man.
Boom. 1989. Yeah.
Yeah. Drop the mic. Yeah.
And I was expecting. See, the Del Toro, I wasn't really expecting much. My friend dragged me to it, and I, didn't care that much. But I was really looking forward to what's that called? The girl walks home alone at night. Did you see that movie?
The Iranian vampire film I didn't see?
Yeah. No, I really was looking forward to that, and it was not very good. I really didn't like it.
On a similar spooky vampire note, that New Zealand mockumentary about What We Do in Darkness.
Yeah.
It's a classic thing where it would be a really good web short,
yes,
and it was an hour and a half long movie.
Yes.
And that's too much of that joke.
Definitely. No, I saw that, and it had some good moments, but you're right. It could have been, swallowed in 5-minute increments. But, an hour and a half together it was like, those comedies from the past that were just a bunch of stuff slammed together, and some of them work, some of them don't. And this one, it had some good stuff in it, but yeah, overall, it was sort of a chore to get through.
And I hate chores.
Yeah, did you even have those growing up?
Yes, I did. I had some chores.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
What was your chore?
Cleaning my room, helping with the laundry.
That's not a chore. That's your room.
What?
What was a chore to help the household out?
Oh, so you're saying a not entirely self-interest-driven activity.
Right. I just imagine you as like a completely individual. I don't sense that you are a part of the family, Josh. What did you do?
Well, we're opening a whole door into my psyche that I wasn't entirely prepared for in the context of our film podcast, Charles. But you're right. I do feel a bit of an outsider, maybe a black sheep, always on the fringe, looking inside, feeling a little bit like I've been forgotten by the major swath of our culture that flows by me, that I can almost touch but can't quite.
So you did the dishes?
Yeah, had some dishes.
Yeah, me too. That was my chore.
Walk the dog.
Yeah. Wow, we had the same chores.
Well, I mean, you gravitate towards the chores that take you outside of conversation. You know what I mean?
Right. Solitary.
Yeah. I've always been a quiet sort. And, those long hours spent dog walking, cleaning the dishes, I think that's really where I've developed the rich inner world that allows me to further dissociate from the sort of responsibilities of adulthood that I frankly care to not acknowledge.
I actually... Yeah, I blamed my eczema. I didn't get to do the dishes anymore. I was good. I don't like the dishes. I kept telling my mom, I was like, it's making my eczema flare up. And so I got out of that one.
Well, in Obama's America, Charles, sure, maybe you can pull on some sort of bullshit excuse to escape responsibility. But in the America that I look forward to, that's right, the Jeb Bush America, will once again have a return to personal responsibility, a sense of pride, a sense of ownership over our great country that we are the stewards of. And by we, I mean, the established white patriarchy.
Yeah. Yeah, the rich stewards.
Long may it reign. It's worked so far. Most people are happy, I think. Right?
No. Oh, but speaking of, this is a perfect segue.
Actually, before you segue, I'm very excited to see where you segue to, because of the two films we watched, you could potentially segue to either. I would propose to you, you could draw a connection from that vacuous joke to either of the two movies. Charles, blow my mind. What direction are you going in?
I was going to just bring up that not all the rich are bad, as we saw in Metropolitan, perhaps.
That's very true. They were very entertaining in Walt Stillman's 1990 movie. Walt Stillman?
No.
Walt Stillman?
Stillman.
Walt Stillman?
Yeah.
Whit Stillman. What a fucked up name.
Walt Whitman's.
Walt Whitman Stiltzman Krillman. No. Whit Stillman. Excuse me. I'm going to get a good breathy H on Mike. Ready? Whit Stillman. Yeah, it's going to sound shit in post-production. But Whit Stillman made this 1990 movie. Charles, talk to me about it. I was shown it recently and was I've had one of those movie experiences where you're in love with it about 10 minutes in and the rest of it is just a pure pleasure. I could have watched 12 hours of this movie.
Whoa. Oh my God, I was so surprised. I really couldn't tell which way you were going to go because I could see you really not liking it, not getting into it, but that's great. I've watched this movie over a dozen times. I've seen it since I was a kid, and I fell in love with it immediately, and I think it's fun to go back into it, and it's a really, I think it's an interesting look. We can go over the plot briefly, like some people like to do when they describe movies, but essentially it's about a bunch of rich people, young people back in I don't know, what was it,
I believe that the director mentions it's his experience in the Upper East Side of the 1970s, but
yeah,
I'm assuming its setting appears to be contemporaneous to its release, so the late 80s.
Well, one thing that's nice about it is that it does open up with the title screen is not too long ago, which I think is really interesting in that we don't really know when this is taking place, and I don't think it really particularly matters just because it sort of always feels like it's from somewhere not too long ago, but certainly not taking place now. So even if this, you saw this back then or tried to figure out if it took place in the 70s or 80s, I don't think it's really important because the people we meet are just they don't really belong. I think that's sort of part of it is just we meet these people that are sort of struggling to find out where they belong in the world that they're living in.
Well, it's kind of like a no-stakes, understated Great Gatsby of this sort of imagined past.
Yeah.
Totally. There's literally nothing on the line in this movie. There are no stakes.
No.
And it's a movie about language that is so beautiful and so effortlessly spun. It's so easy to fall into this. I liked what you said. It has this remove to it that it has like a dreamlike quality because it's cut in this verite style. It moves constantly. Conversations interweave and begin and end and jump around. The whole thing is somewhat perplexing and beguiling.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to tell people what it is. If they haven't seen it, you probably should. But it's just about a bunch of, rich people during the debutante season, and then there's a new guy that they happen to meet outside, and they sort of take him in, even though he's not low class, but he's in like the middle class, more of a socialist, and it's about him.
He's an aspirant.
What's that mean?
Like he's aspiring. Like he makes a show of rejecting the haughty, indulgences of the upper class, but he quietly, obviously, is attracted to this world. And one is given the impression that it's a sense of community he has not encountered anywhere else.
And how can you not be attracted to it?
Yeah, it's one of the great movies where the central premise of the film is that it's debutante ball season, and we never go to a debutante ball. At no point do we actually see what is ostensibly the linchpin of what draws these people together. We only see the constantly fluctuating social scene around these events where alliances are struck and denied, angers and frustrations are carried out in this sort of bizarre, hyper literate, but like totally baseless forms of like flaunting power and money and judgment, and it's so strange because you're watching kids like what, they must be like 16 or 17.
The actors themselves or the characters?
Well, the characters, like they're in high school.
Yeah, they're high schoolers, I think.
Yeah, and the basic joke that is funny every time is that you're hearing these people, these children, speak about life and about their circumstances and their world, as if it's this incredibly important thing worthy of great dissection and exploration, and all they're doing is going to parties and talking about going to parties. And it's like almost Shakespearean the way that they like imbue their lives with meaning when nothing is happening.
But yeah, I think on the other side of that, though, while they're not doing much and the plot, as you said, doesn't really have much stakes to it, I think there are a lot of stakes, and especially to that age, that's a really interesting age to be, looking into, because that's really where a lot of changes are going on. There's so many options, I think, is what is nice to see. And when you're looking at characters that take that much time to really look at where they are and where they want to be and what they have to do. I mean, when you get older, you just the amount of stuff that you can potentially do and the amount of choices you have are getting limited and limited. It's while potentially they aren't really doing very much, I think it's also exploring a time period in someone's life where they have so much to think about and so much that they could be doing. And whether they actually accomplish anything is not really the point. I think it's just there's a vibrancy to what they're doing, and I think it's deserved. I think that their lives are. I think there is something that's really fascinating about watching young people really try to look into that.
No, you make an excellent point. The emotional undercurrents are very powerful. It's the set dressing that surrounds that is like delicious cotton candy, completely insubstantial conversation. And you're right, as the plot wears on, we begin to see exactly what the meaning is. And underneath all of this elaborate presentation and frosting, the cake of the matter is actually fascinating, where we try to figure out what these people want, what they're trying to get, where they want to go, how little they know about any of those questions.
Yeah.
And the climax of the movie, which I love things where you describe the climax and it sounds so fucking boring, but in the context of the movie, it's just the best. But the climax of the movie involves a $100 cab ride to Long Island.
Yeah.
That's essentially the emotional apex of the film. Involves two teenage boys paying for a ludicrously expensive cab ride from Manhattan to Long Island. And the emotional impact of that decision cannot possibly be described without watching how they get to that decision. But it is it's riveting.
It is.
These two Lord Fauntleroy's foolishly traipsing out to Montauk basically is like this Olympian undertaking in the context of the story.
Right. And I think that points to both of our, interactions with the movie, is that yes, it's such a trivial thing for most people, but for them it is this huge undertaking. And I think also that, the whole reason why they're going out there is to try to rescue this woman, or this girl actually, this teenage girl, from the villain the whole time. One of probably the best characters, and at least the dialogue that comes out of his mouth, Chris Eichmann's character, amazing. But he essentially badmouths, von Sloniker? What was his name?
Yeah. Oh God, Rod Van Sloniker.
Yeah, something like that.
It's so good.
But he's just like the whole movie.
The corral of rich people names in this movie is so delightful.
But
I'm gonna try to pull a list up right now.
Yeah, the whole movie we're taught that he's a terrible person and that he's just the worst. And then the end of the movie is these two guys who didn't really like each other. They come to become friends. They're trying to rescue this girl from him. And, they take this cab ride out there. They take her back, and nothing really happened. Nothing's really a problem. Rick Von Sloniker is not that bad. And it's just like it's just the way we watch these young men and women become men and women through these actions. It's delightful, and it's really fun. Just the way we can see how intense it looks to them, but from us watching in the audience, it's just almost silly. But it's just, you get both aspects at once, and I think it works really well.
Well, it's delicate and it's precious, and I guess, to me, the engine of what makes this movie fascinating is that I guess I want to say Shakespearean. Like, you see these people just digging in to this incredibly rich dialogue that does not stop for a second, and it's delightful. If you're a fan of language and excellent screenwriting, it is the best. I got a list of names together: Audrey Roget, Tom Townsend, Charlie Black, Sally Fowler, Cynthia McLean, Fred Neff, Serena Slocum, Victor Lemley. It's great. Ugh.
But yeah, it's just also, I think it's also really interesting that the Chris Eichman character that we love throughout the whole movie, he's just like he captivates us the whole time. He's the one that has all the good, I mean, they all have good lines. None of them ever really pale, but Chris Eichman's character, what was his character's name?
Oh, Nick Smith.
Nick Smith. He's better than them all, but he's also worse than them all. I think that's also really, we sort of dismiss them as young people sort of overthinking where they are, but his character is extremely complicated, and I think we get sort of a limited view since he's the one that sort of takes this Tom Townsend character in and tries to really get him to be a part of the group. I sort of became fond of him just because of that and the way he seems like he's one of the good guys, but he's a pretty complicated character in the way that he's a hypocrite, comes out, and he's pretty, he's just sort of arrogant and treats people poorly. It's a really fascinating, as we sort of get to know these people, how they do have these flaws to them, and it's not as simple as it looks to begin with.
I want to share a couple excellent Nick Smith quotes. This is probably the best one, but Rick Von Slonaker's tall, rich, good-looking, stupid, dishonest, conceited, a bully, a liar, drunken thief, nigomaniac, and probably psychotic. In short, highly attractive to women.
It's good.
Playing strip poker with an exhibitionist somehow takes the challenge away. It's the best. They're so self-aware, cripplingly self-aware teenagers with all the time and overeducation in the world to mask their very basic desires and have it come out in this ludicrously over-articulated way. I don't know. It's just, I wish this was like a television show that went on for like years.
Yeah.
I could really watch this shit forever.
His, have you seen any of his other movies or his show that almost got made?
I have not. I know that this is the first of a series of 3. What? It's like a bored bourgeois.
It's the doomed bourgeois and love trilogy.
There we go. Yeah. I will say, by strength of this movie, I'd be very enthusiastic to see more films by the great Whit Stillman.
They're all good. This one I think is my personal favorite, but Barcelona and Last Days of Disco are certainly right up there. I wasn't as impressed with Damsels in Distress, but I liked what he did. He essentially seemed to be recreating a Fred Astaire movie in today's cinematic climate, which I think I'd rather just watch a Fred Astaire movie, but overall it was okay. And then the show that he tried to get set up with Amazon did not get picked, so that didn't get moved forward too. But if you liked Metropolitan, you should check out the show that he started with Amazon if you have Amazon Prime.
What's it called?
Oh, I don't know. The something. Let me check.
The something.
It's a one word.
It has a certain... The one word? That's kind of good.
No, it's a one word. It's the Cosmopolitans, I think.
That's what I'm seeing on IMDb. That's a website.
IMDb?
.com.
Oh, no. I thought that was the name of the movie.
No.
The Cosmopolitans.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It didn't get picked, but you can watch the pilot. Maybe they made some other episodes. I don't know. It was pretty good. It's about Americans in Paris.
An American Werewolf in Paris.
Not that one. No. Just about America.
That's by John Landis.
No. It's okay. Just watch it. But yeah, it's and also Last Days of Disco has...
We have similar last names, but he's John Landis and I'm Josh Landis.
Wait, I thought you made that.
No, I didn't.
Oh.
I made the pornography spinoff of An American Werewolf in Paris, but it's just a picture of Paris Hilton and a man wearing a werewolf mask and like an American flag t-shirt, so you can tell that that's the pun.
That's where he's from, yeah. Good.
Yes. Yeah. It's also a sequel to A Night in Paris. So, it's a sequel and a remake, and it's a pornographic film.
Well, you should also watch Last Days of Disco because it has two of the characters are recent Hampshire grads.
You don't say.
I do say.
I like that because, I don't want to get too personal on the air, and given that we earlier discussed my childhood feelings of abandonment, loneliness, and estrangement, I think this is not too far out of field. But I went to Hampshire College, and in fact, origin story, that's where I met this old so-and-so, Charles Hobby.
That's right. Episode whatever comes out.
You want to do the origin story episode?
Yeah, this is it. It should usually they come first just to get it out of the way, but we kept it secret. And there's more.
I'm
We'll
into
get a little
burying
more
the
out
origin story until you're very invested in the universe, and then you figure out why it is the way it is, you know?
there. Why the universe exists.
Yeah, well, I think that's asking a lot from this podcast, but I think, let's
We
make
can deliver.
let's make a good go at it, you know?
We'll try.
If I had to guess general boredom, that's probably why the universe is.
I mean, the alternative is boring. Boringer, though.
More boringer, I think, is how it's said.
Either way you look at it, there's a lot of tedium going on. And, that's why we're here, to just put up with that.
And speaking of tedium
Yes.
and the sounds of our voices,
Yes.
we also saw a movie this week that would be extremely hard to describe as tedious or boring.
I agree.
The film?
I can't pronounce it.
Sicario. Sicario? Sicario.
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 Yeah.
Sicario. I think it's Sicario. I want it to be Sicario.
Scarpo.
We saw a different Del Toro, one who I don't want to make any assumptions about your experience with the film, but if you similarly to Charles did not like the Guillermo del Toro movie Crimson Peak, this Benicio del Toro movie, no relationship, was excellent. God, what a movie.
Dennis Villeneuve, however you pronounce his name.
Can I just say that it's in French, which is in poor taste, and that's all I want to say about the matter. Charles, continue.
He's I've seen every single one of his movies, and he's one of the best right now. Everyone seems to love him too. It's rare that such a commercial, maybe he's not that commercially successful, but he's pretty commercially successful. Is also critically successful too. He's doing great stuff.
I actually, I've seen part of Enemy, which I would like to see all of. I've seen nothing else he's done. I know that you loved Prisoners.
His first movie
perhaps
is,
I have a little digging into. What's his first movie?
It's called Polytechnique, and it's pretty much just a real-time sort of just watching a school shooting happen, and it's based on a true event that happened in Montreal. An all-women's school was shot up by a guy in the 70s, I think, and we pretty much just watched that happen.
Hey, that's a shadow of the great Gus Van Sant we mentioned earlier, who made the almost unwatchable Elephant.
But it's very good, and he's Villeneuve or Villeneuve. He's we watched Bronson. We talked about what's his name, Refn. We talked about his relationship to violence. I think this guy Dennis, I'll just call him Dennis.
Denny, call him Denny.
His movies are also a lot about violence, but I think they're very different. Whereas, something like Only God Forgives or Drive sort of turns the violence into a very, it's on display. It's very slow and gratuitous even. Where I think Denny, he's just really interested in violence too, but it's not about watching it happen. It's more about everything else that goes along with the violence. I think it's really interesting.
Well, I think if Refn is fascinated by the aesthetics of violence and death and the more philosophic inferences one can make about violence, Denny, as I feel very comfortable calling him, couches everything that happens in this movie with its human fallout. There is no casual expenditure of life in the movie. The heroes do not pass through the movie unscathed by the truly unspeakable violence that happens around them. If anything, the only people we see who get through it unscathed are the people so far pushed into a realm of blackness and darkness that nothing can touch them. But for almost anyone else in the movie, and in fact, our major portal to the film, the excellent Emily Blunt, who talk about a fucking movie, she was incredible in this.
I thought she was perfect.
I think that's the best performance I've seen in 2015. There I go, on record.
Boom.
Emily, that's for you.
Yeah, I haven't really followed her career too much. I really sort of only started. She was in that not very good movie about
Edge of Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Not a great movie, but for a big screen science fiction picture in 2015, barring the last 2 minutes, it was a pretty good movie. So credit where credit is due. I saw it on the big screen, IMAX 3D, and I really enjoyed it.
It didn't do anything. It just it touched on so many really cool topics that Groundhog Day did a little better, but it just they just totally ignored so much that could have happened in that scenario. I was bored by it, and then especially Emily Blunt's character was treated like shit. Somehow
it's
at
a
the
hard
end,
C+. It's a hard C+.
Yeah.
No argument. I'm not saying anything more than that. But
she was
it's
pretty
fun
good.
to see in theaters. Edge of Tomorrow, well done. Oh, she was in Looper, a movie I almost have totally forgotten at this point. Huh.
Wait, she was in Looper?
Yeah, she played Sarah in Looper.
She played the mom?
A movie that, talk about a real fart. I was looking forward to that, and that was just not a good movie.
Yeah, I think I liked it more than it deserved just because I like that guy, whatever his name is, Rian
Johnson.
Yeah.
Rian?
I don't know. It's not spelled like Ryan.
I know, right?
So I think I just gave it a little more of me than I should have. But yeah, not great. I think the best part, though, is Bruce Willis and Joseph Gordon-Levitt trying to beat the same person. That was funny.
Yeah, I don't think funny in the way that they meant it to be.
No, not at all. The face.
We're looping, if you will, far from our chosen topic of discussion, Sicario by Denny Villeneuve.
Denny Venny. Oh, I'll jump right back
Denny
in.
Venny.
You mentioned the human life value there. I'm not really sure what you were getting. I found that human life was so devalued in this movie, which is really more of certainly a Denny classic. Just to the way that death is sort of tallied up and weighted is just, you see so much of it throughout the movie, but I don't think the full effects of it aren't felt. I think the most staggering death in the whole movie was the Mexican cop character.
Well, here's what I'm saying. The sort of Emily Blunt's character serves as the Richter scale for what's happening in the film. And she, like us, we don't know about this shadow war that's taking place. So the film is about the Juarez drug cartel nightmare happening on the border of Mexico and the United States. It begins with a pretty unforgettable, the police burst into this home ostensibly to rescue hostages. Due to a seemingly inexplicable panic shotgun blast, it's revealed the walls are filled with corpses and the house in the back is booby-trapped. And from that opening of a house whose walls are lined with rotting corpses hog-tied with bags over their heads, it only gets darker. And while the people who take life and experience death the most wantonly in the film are numerous, we still experience all of those things through Emily Blunt, whose character begins as someone working for, what is the FBI or the Phoenix Police Department?
I think she's from the FBI.
She's essentially recruited by these higher powers to serve as, well, spoiler alert, bum bum ba. So I want to establish some canon. When I go bum bum ba, the next thing I'm saying will reveal an important plot point. So, don't be a huge dick about it. Anyways, it's revealed that her presence on this sort of shadowy task force led by the eerily chipper Josh Brolin and the eerily silent Benicio del Toro is in fact a sort of quasi-legal paramilitary CIA creation wherein a representative of the Medellin Colombian drug cartel, Benicio del Toro, is sort of this lone gun rampage unit carrying out an endless series of revenge killings against the men who killed his family. And her only presence on this task force is to legally justify the things that they're doing to disrupt the drug trade by essentially dropping a Wolverine-style character into the midst of the Juarez drug cartel.
That was amazing. I felt like I just watched the movie again.
I would say this is the most tense movie I've seen in theaters in a while.
You brought up a lot.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about all of it. I don't even
Sure.
really know where to start. I think let's start with Del Toro. He's somehow he's been cast very similarly. He plays the same sort of character all the time, but he's perfect in this movie. You don't ever really get a sense of who he is, but you get all these tiny glimpses that surprise you. There's the scene where he's talking to the immigrants and sort of just talking to them in Spanish and crouching down with them. That was just a scene that I didn't expect I guess I like the way Denny. I like the way Denny works. He has all these scenes that we expect after watching a lot of action movies, like the scene. He's done like 10 minutes with the scene where they're driving around, and we expect maybe a car chase or explosions or something exciting to happen. And all that happens is they get like stuck in traffic and they shoot some people. And like just the way that Denny makes this tension out of stuff that we expect. That's a really powerful way to make a movie, I think, is to play off of what we think is going to happen and really just almost undermine it by making something that's just super. The climax is taken away from us by making it really simple, and it's really nice. I like that scene a lot. But yeah,
well, he sort of takes the micro encounters of this vast, seemingly uncontainable conflict that at once is so apparent in, a house filled with corpses, or the U.S. agents watching the vicious violence unravel in Juarez from across the border. But it's these tiny moments inside this huge conflict that really illuminate what's actually going on. It's when Benicio del Toro hacks his way single-handedly through rank after rank of bodyguards to get to the head of the cartel. That encounter is so much more significant than all of the wanton loss of life that we're drowned in the images of a Juarez ripped apart by this, unthinkable cruelty.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe what I was thinking about because the opening scene we're immediately introduced to a bunch of bodies stacked in one of the coolest methods to hide those bodies, just completely in the walls. That was a very nice scene. But just like the way we are immediately introduced to death all the time, but it doesn't. We never get a sense of the loss. Like they're just. I feel it's Emily Blunt's character is really interesting. We never really learn her her motivations to do this. A lot of those characters, like the cops that have lost their partners, or the cops that are mad about something, want revenge. Like she doesn't have that. She's just sort of. We get a sense that she wants to accomplish something, but we don't really know why, and we don't really think. Nothing really felt like it was affecting her, because she's already so affected by everything. It seems like she was such a weird person.
I completely disagree. I think that we watch her fall apart in a much more subtle version of what Spielberg was attempting with Eric Bana's character in Munich. We watch someone who does embody loss and violence and death. I mean, dude, she pukes and people die when she is betrayed by a corrupt Phoenix cop who ostensibly is trying to sleep with her. And by the way, the reveal in that moment when the way visually how we're informed what's about to happen in that scene where she's being seduced by this handsome cop character, and then she realizes that he has the same bands that the cartel uses to hold onto their huge bills of cash. Brilliant, amazing filmmaking.
But it's not. I'm not saying that
I
she
disagree. She's so rattled and so broken by what happened. All of her, any sense of intimacy is just torn from her. From realizing the man she's about to sleep with is betraying her, towards that last scene in the film, second to last scene in the film, where Del Toro straight up holds a gun to her head to make her sacrifice her remaining values in the waning minutes of the film. Like, she's destroyed in this movie.
Yeah, but I think maybe I didn't say it well enough, is that I think she's already coming into this movie destroyed. I don't feel like she's already gone. She's already so removed from what she's doing. I just never really felt why she wanted to do this. I think maybe she was trying to capture back some of the stuff that she's lost, and as you said, it just completely destroys her in the end. But I don't think she was coming from a strong point. I think she was coming from near zero, and it's just the way we're introduced to that whole hookup thing, I really like that scene because it does give some intimacy and personality to her character. But we learn in that she hasn't had anyone like that in years. She's already completely been lost to this world.
That's a very good point. I'm actually realizing a loose structure of how metaphorically Denny V sets up the movie. Because if you think about it, it's a descent into an alarmingly normal hell is the movie.
Right.
Because the central metaphor at the beginning is that this whatever suburban cul-de-sac house is actually very crudely hiding the unbelievable carnage of a constantly omnipresent war. And then the end of the film, where after a seemingly tangential character we follow in brief flashes throughout the film, this Mexican cop who towards the end of the film is revealed to in fact be a corrupt, not even corrupt, maybe just a fake cop working for the cartel. when he is killed by Benicio del Toro and just tossed aside like he's nothing. The final images of the film are of his son playing a soccer game without his father watching. And in the midst of their soccer game, as the parents cheer and the game becomes heated and the children get excited, there's an outburst of gunfire in Juarez, and everyone stops. And then the game keeps going and the film ends. So if you think about it, that beginning metaphor of this veneer of normalcy crudely hiding rotting corpses to any semblance of normalcy in Juarez being inseparable from the trauma of everyday life and the drug war, Emily Blunt's descent from the beginning of the movie, where there's that veneer, to the end, is extreme. That's the through line, is that she begins with this veneer, and by the end, she can't deny that this thing's become a part of her life in every way. So from the shitty drywall corpse hiding thing to the outbreak of gunfire, even as children attempt to play soccer, that's our through line.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And as I said earlier, the Mexican cop character I think is really well done. And to go from 30 bodies in a house with no faces, no name, really no personality, to at the end we lose this one person that we don't really have much connection to, other than we see. I think he has the most. He's the person that we have the most intimate connection to. We see his family. We see the way he treats his wife. We see the way he treats his son. We see the love there. We also see how hard it is. And I think it's such a beautiful way to, as you said, start with American, this American cop character. And we travel with her to see the body count on her side really mean something on the other side. And that's maybe what I was talking about, why I don't really, what the Mexican cop character story, that felt to me so much more than anything that she ever got. I don't know. It's maybe I'm not describing this very well, but it's just.
No, I hear you. He is humanized in a way that. So as I was watching the movie, part of me was like, exactly the same observation you're saying right now, where I was like, I like this movie a lot. It's beautiful. These sweeping shots, the American Southwest, the integration of horrible urban decay with these unbelievable shots of a desert sky, filled with clouds and storms. There's so little that we know about what's going on. It felt almost conveniently absent at times, but he's really just artfully stringing you along for a real fucking gut punch.
Yeah.
As the movie goes on, every time there's more intimacy given, we realize that the violence, previously totally dehumanized violence, gets even more nauseating and sickening. The climactic. There is a scene in this movie that I will refer to as the Benicio del Toro dinner scene that is one of, I can't for the life of me imagine anyone talking about films this year and not talking about that scene. Because all of these hypotheticals and abstracts, all of this shadowy, intercontinental political games, all of these things come to a head with two fathers sitting at a dinner table with their families.
Yeah, and I mean, that whole thing, I think it really speaks to watching that happen, watching us learn more and more about Del Toro's character throughout the movie. I just like the way that he just changes so much, as I was talking about earlier, where he goes from one scene just sauntering into a room with a water bottle, and we don't see what he does, but just the way that he operates there as this he's just so powerful in that scene. And then he goes to speaking so softly to immigrants to also, but it's the same goal, just to get to that ending scene where he sits down and talks to the person that affected him so deeply. I think his character, along with Emily Blunt's character, really just pushed to that. Denny I think his movies all sort of follow this inevitable trek where it's not really you said you haven't really seen any of his other movies.
That's correct. I have not.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out, just to show that I'm a little.
And I think it's important to use our show as a vehicle to promote yourself at my expense. So yeah, with that being said, please continue.
Wonderful. But just to watch Emily Blunt's character go from the beginning to the end, his character arcs are the most faded that I've seen in a really long time, where we get this sense that they have very little control over what's happening, and they still just go along for the ride. Del Toro definitely is in more control, but he still is just trying to get to this one point.
Well, actually, his character underscores what you're saying beautifully, because we're shown this methodical, hardworking, heartless killer. And at first we think, okay, he's some sort of government operative. Then we're given the horrific realization that he's a government operative, in fact, for a different government than the one we think he's going to be. And then underneath all of this guile and cunning and lethal focus, it's just a broken-hearted man driven insane with a quest for revenge. So underneath all of these layers, it's just an emotionally ravaged shell of a person carrying out a singular mission. And
yeah, I think that's what I didn't say very well in the beginning, is that it's not that these people don't have arcs. It's not that they don't have feelings and they're not affected by what's happening. But I think what's more is important to Denny is that we're introduced to characters that have already gone through so much that they are ruined, they're numb, and all they have left is to finish out their arc. So we're there at like the last 10% of their story, and that's all we get. And I think that's a really fascinating way to introduce us to a character and to watch them not change, to what we expect them to go through something. And it's really we as the audience that goes through something. I think by watching them just sort of, we just watch them work, but we don't really, they're already so far gone. I think watching Jake in both Enemy and Prisoner is just like, I think inevitable is just a nice word for his movies. We already know what's going to happen, sort of. I mean, we learn some stuff, but just like them getting to the end is more about us getting to the end, not really them. They never complete anything, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I never feel like there's resolution in what they do. It's always just a matter-of-fact conclusion.
This is it's a political movie. It's a movie. It's an anti-war movie.
Yeah, it's a Quagmire movie.
It's a story about an intractable situation where the solutions available are so beyond the pale, so unforgiving, so ridiculous, and so nihilistic that anyone who touches the wake of this, violence is lost in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's no universe where you talk about 2015 in film and do not talk about Sicario by Den.
Yeah. It's like there was no universe. Well, apparently you missed this universe, but I thought Prisoners was certainly one of the best to come out, whatever year that was, 14 or 13. He's just, he's brutal. I think he does a lot of the same thing over and over again, it seems like, but he does it so well. And they are superficially very different, but in the end, we're really just watching the brutal world that's what we have, these people have left.
No, and yeah, it's a terrifying excavation of that. And it's
yeah, so while it's political, it certainly is political, but I think as you're pointing out, it's also very personal too, and just sort of shows both sides of that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I'm excited for more of him.
I give it the highest praise possible. Go see it on the big screen with a big old bucket of popcorn. Is this the worst date movie out right now?
I saw it on a date.
Okay, you're in a long-term relationship. I'm talking about like, hey, let's go see a movie, someone you're trying to woo, and you end up seeing a movie about the hollowing out of humanity that the drug war has left us in. A bunch of just, dust-covered corpses mindlessly killing, all for the sake of nothing.
It sounds to me like a perfect date movie. Hey, if that's not going to work out, I just, it's a good test.
Yeah, if you can't get down with absolutely soul-crushing media in the first interaction socially with somebody, get out. Because hanging out with this guy, it's gonna crush your soul. So if you can't handle the mediatized experience of it, guess what, honey? You're gonna hate the real deal. Because that's what this is, the real deal with Josh and Charles. Holy shit, that's an outro. God damn it, we just fell into that one.
I had more to say, but it's over.
I mean, come on, that was so good. I think the only way to ruin this outro would be to draw attention to how proud I am of how good that outro was. I think we would really lose people if I went on about it.
No, I think we should just cut there.
Oh, when? Now?
We already missed it, but as soon as possible.
Okay, so 1, 2,